The Edible Bean School on RealAgriculture.com is brought to you by Hensall Co-op.
Hi, I'm Bernard Tobin. Welcome to the Edible Bean School. We are back for another season, and we're going to kick things off today with a look at the 2024 growing year. We saw some tremendous yields in Manitoba, and we'll head west to talk to Manitoba Ag's pulse and soybean specialist Dennis Lange to get his takeaways from last season and some thoughts on the grower enthusiasm he's seeing this winter. But first, we're going to take a look at the Ontario crop. Hensall Co-op's origination manager Wade Bickell joins me now to talk about a crop that certainly had its ups and downs. Hi, Wade. Hey, great to have you back at the Edible Bean School.
Great to be back, Bern. What a year we've had.
Another year for sure. Hey, and we always start our first episode of the new season with a look in the rearview mirror, for some observations from the past season. When you talk about 2024, you say it was the best of times, it was the worst of times. What did you see?
The spring started out pretty well. We had a nice start to planting, and everything was going pretty good. And then the rain began. We hardly had anything planted in the month of May, but by the 20th of June, things were pretty well in.
Yeah. And what about the rest of the season? How did that come together?
Some of those poor folks in what I call the Golden Triangle of Oxford County, they had way too much water, and some water laid around there, the worst I'd ever seen. Yeah. And then you go to the north, you get north of Hensall to the Brussels area. That area had some of the nicest looking dry beans I've also seen in my time. So that's why I say it's the best of times, it's the worst of times.
Yeah. I guess yield is the great determiner. What about Ontario yields last year, Wade? I know Azuki beans did really well again in 2024.
Yeah, so I wouldn't have guessed that we'd have a back-to-back record yield on Azuki beans in Ontario, but it happened in 24. We also had, I would say, probably close to average yields on navy beans and black beans and kidney beans, even though that high production area of Oxford County and parts of Middlesex County had a really tough time this year with too much water.
Yeah, I know. I rode around the combine and did some work with a couple of growers, and it was hit and miss. What about quality?
We had a fantastic harvest. Like, the harvest weather we had was conducive to really good quality beans. So, other than a bit of cracked seed coat issues with some of the large seeded beans and some of the black beans, it was pretty good. It was pretty good all the way through harvest, and some of the nicest quality beans we've taken in a few years.
Well, that means what I'm hearing there is probably it was a pretty good year for disease. What about white mold? It didn't appear to be a big problem last year.
I think that there was anybody that had a good crop was applying a fungicide and did a good job, right? So that white mold seemed to be under control.
Yeah,
I have this silly saying: if there's no mold, there's no gold. So we have a little bit, but it was just the right amount.
Yeah, it really speaks to growing conditions, right? Right. Everything's thriving, including the disease. What about anthracnose?
Yeah, 2024, those areas that had too much water, we seen that dreaded disease pop up in different market classes, cranberries, black beans, and white beans as well. So, it was controlled with the fungicides, but it was a good wake up call for growers to be vigilant and spray the appropriate fungicides when that disease is present, because it's a devastating one. It can really take away the quality on dry beans pretty quick.
Mm. Hey, let's talk about some markets here. Are you seeing opportunities for specific classes? As we head into 2025, what's the market story?
So for Hensall Co-op, we're well positioned with lots of export markets. So we have good opportunities for white beans, navy beans, black beans, and dark red kidneys. So those are still available, and growers still have an opportunity to do those in 2025.
No, I can't let you go without talking about Donald Trump and tariffs. It's dominated the conversation, and it probably will be part of the talk going forward. What are the potential implications, Wade, for edible bean production and, moving those beans to U.S. markets?
I think that this whole tariff and tariff talks is making buyers, making end users rethink the way supply chains are going to work going forward. Will it rebalance the way beans flow around the world? Typically markets find their way to the beans, or any product finds their way to the market. It just might find a different way to the market. So I think at the end of the day, it's going to shake things up for sure if the tariffs do happen. But it's really about evolution of supply chains going forward, I think.
I'm now joined by Manitoba Ag's pulse and soybean specialist, Dennis Lange. Hi, Dennis. Hey, thanks for dropping by.
Yeah, great to be here again. Spring is not too far away, so as normal, I'm wearing something really bright to bring the spring on. So,
well, we love the Hawaiian shirts. It always brightens up the first episode of the season. Let's kick this off with a look at 2024 yields in Manitoba. A really nice crop with yields across the board, averaging 2,000 pounds or better. Tell us about it, Dennis.
Well, it's a little surprising to some degree when you always see the good numbers. More so because the spring started off a little bit slower. And, this year, like pinto beans, for example, we had a record year as far as acres go, just almost 110,000 acres. And provincial yield this year is just over 2,200 pounds an acre. And it looks like that could be either tying or just slightly above our provincial record for pintos in Manitoba. Generally did pretty good. Black beans, we did see an increase in acres in black beans again in Manitoba, upwards of 50,000 acres from 30 last year. Yields are right around that 2,000 pound mark there as well. But overall, the beans were really good. The only one that was down a little bit this year, under that 2,000 pounds, and there was some lower yields because of the wet weather in September in some areas, but we can talk about that a little bit later.
No, as I said, you had some great yields, but things didn't really start off all that well. A tough spring.
Yeah, it's a little tough going here for some growers. Growers that are in the lighter, sandier soils, we had a lot of wind. We always tend to get a lot of wind in Manitoba, and this year, just the way things went, some of the beans were just popping up in that June 10th period. And we started to get some strong winds on some of those lighter soils. There was some plant shearing, a little bit of reseeding happening in different areas, and maybe some growers actually changed out of beans just because it was getting too late for crop insurance to replant. But a bit of a tough start, a little cooler in May and June as well. Lots of comments on how slow things were going for the longest time. And then as the season progressed, we started to get warmer, and we got some timely rains. And as you can see, we did get some. We definitely did get some good yields this year.
Yeah, but as you say, things improved. Kind of uneventful during the summer, but you did get some heavy rains, which brought about some challenges late in the fall.
Yeah, it was one of those unusual years. Like a lot of times, in different areas, we'll get big rains throughout the summer, and we have some stand losses in certain areas. And this year, not a lot of that in the dry bean regions, except for that September period. Right in the Winkler area, they were upwards of 6 inches of rain in one rainfall, and it was timed such that most of the cereals were done. The soybeans hadn't started. The dry beans had just kind of, some of the earlier varieties like crayons were being undercut and on the ground, and we got that 6 inches. Overall, the quality of the beans, of all bean types, were okay through that stretch or through that area, but the cranberries, I think, suffered the most just because of them laying on the ground. And any beans that are laying on the ground and in that, wet, on that wet ground or laying in water, that type of thing, that's going to affect the quality for sure. But it's not our major acres. Like we have about 4,000 acres of crayons, and in the end, it was a proportion of that were affected. But as you can tell by the yields, still pretty good yields for crayons this year.
Yeah. Hey, let's talk about some of the takeaways from the 2024 season. You attended a dry bean meeting in Carman, Manitoba this week. A big turnout, you were saying. What were growers telling you about their plans for 2025, and what advice did you share?
Well, so this meeting that we have every year, this is put on by the Manitoba bean dealers and the bean industry. It's been going on for 10 years now. I kind of coordinate it. And what's really impressive of this is the first time we've gone to a single meeting. In the past, we've split the meetings between 2 different locations. This year, we decided, we're going to do a bit of a customer appreciation event. And weren't sure how it was going to go over initially because, you're bringing growers from different areas. I ran into somebody at breakfast that morning. They said, oh, they're from Outlook, Saskatchewan. They're growing beans in the irrigated ground. So we got growers from Western Manitoba. We got growers from Central Manitoba. 170 people showed up. Some really good conversations. We brought some speakers in from Nebraska to talk about direct harvesting and some of the work that the researchers are doing there on inoculants and dry beans. We talked a little bit about some of the variety development and how that process goes from somebody from Idaho who supplies seed to Manitoba. And then we kind of finished off the day with the the cost production numbers. One of our speakers with Manitoba Agriculture, Darren Bond, came on, talked about cost production numbers in dry beans and really focused. I think this is in general in ag this year is your growers are really going to have to focus on their costs this year, know what their numbers are and contract accordingly, because I think that's the biggest thing. That's probably the biggest takeaway. There's still enthusiasm in it. The growers that are there are the growers that have been long-term growers. We might see a few new growers, but generally the industry is pretty stable. But I think some of the big takeaways that we saw from this meeting here this year is that there's definitely still interest in growing dry beans. The industry in Manitoba is quite strong in that respect, and you can see we had 20 displayers at our event here, so there's good support for that industry. And for something that's been going 10 years, it's good to see that conversation. And we started at 10 in the morning and we finished at 4:30, so it was a really good day.
What do you expect acres to be this year, Dennis? Right around, lots of enthusiasm. We're going to see about the same numbers, maybe a little tick.
I'll say right now, last year we had about 180,000 acres. The big increase was pintos. That's, I think, surprised a number of people because in the past the highest we've ever seen was around 91,000, and this year we're just right around that 110,000. Hard to get a handle on it right now. I would say it would be similar. I can't see it dropping a whole lot right now. What could happen is if you see some pricing contracts that come out in various crops, not only in beans, but that could swing acres a little bit. But a lot of times these rotations are kind of set. So I'm kind of thinking we're going to see a very similar number this year. And time will tell on that one if I'm going to be right or not. So,
well, good stuff, Dennis. Always great to have you on the Edible Bean School. We'll catch up with you during the growing season.
Sounds good.